Yeah, now we're going to talk about overcoming disappointment. And I think we've all obviously we've all raced, we've all had disappointing races, and we've all had that like gutted feeling at the end where you're just like, you just want to cry. And like, how do we kind of get over that? And disappointment can be not just races, but an injury, a bad workout, anything, just not being where you think you should be. Um, and I'll just sort of share like a little story as just kind of an example of kind of how I deal with disappointment. Um, Last year at Tahoe, I DNF'd the race, um, and I was obviously very disappointed. Now I'm not a perfect athlete like Jessica, so when I get disappointed, I just decide to drink heavily and then call Jessica and cry. So not the best coping mechanisms, but I'm not perfect. But after I kind of got home from Tahoe and it all sort of sunk in, and I'm like, oh my God, like I had sponsorship money on the line. I had invested all this time and money into this race, and I've got nothing to show for it. To my surprise, I wasn't that disappointed, and it really comes from what Jessica's talking about, is the fact that I did everything in my control to be ready for that event. So I left New York City and went to California to train on specific terrain. I made that time investment, I made that financial investment, and I put myself in the best position to have the race that I wanted. Something out of my control, how my body responded to the cold weather, caused a DNF. So I was able to walk away and I was okay because that was out of my control. The second sort of thing that helps me sort of get over disappointment is understanding that the end outcome isn't that big of a deal. This is Tahoe. This is Spartan World Championships. It's actually not the biggest deal. It's a race. It's very hyped up because it's Spartan and they have all these stars competing, such as Faye Setting, OCR, and Lindsay Webster. It's a kind of a made up challenge, and we all choose to partake in it. But in the grand scheme of our lives, it doesn't really change anything. My boyfriend still loves me. I still have a great family. I still, can make a living thanks to you guys. Life still goes on. But I think that I was okay with the result because I really enjoyed the process leading up to it. I had a great time training in California. Regardless if I did well or not, I wouldn't have taken back those months of preparation. I wouldn't have taken back those hard workouts. They weren't a waste. The trails that I ran, the long runs, the adventures I had with my friends, the training time was enjoyable. So I was able to sort of swallow the fact that the outcome didn't exist. I had a DNF next to my name. So yeah, I think that's just kind of, how I've dealt with disappointment in the past, is just sort of stepping back and sort of seeing the big picture and remembering that if you enjoyed the process, even if the outcome didn't go so well, it's a win-win really.
Yeah. I'm not the perfect athlete. Thank you, Faye.
Mhm.
I also have shed many, many tears from racing, and it sucks. Losses, whether they're like a literal loss or an injury or an event cancellation, I mean, they're gutting. And I almost find myself going through stages of grief. Like with every new injury, I find that I like first I'm angry, and then I have some denial, and then I reach the point of acceptance, and then I kind of wallow between self-pity and like extreme motivation and this and that. And through all that, I've kind of like developed this coping mechanism. And I I really believe that the first thing you go through, whether it be an injury or a cancellation or a really bad outcome, is the worst because you have no idea how to process it. Like my first serious injury was in university. I had to spend the entire summer rehabbing my first Achilles thing, man. Oh, if only I knew I'd have 15 more Achilles injuries between then and now. But it was so sucky because I was home for the summer from my NCAA school where I was only there because I was a runner. And I was so stoked to see all my best friends who were all in track, and they all got to train and race all summer, and I was stuck rehabbing, and I had this total loss of identity because I was like, I'm not really sure who I am if I'm not running. Will people still like me if I'm not this like good athlete? Because that's just the athlete. Which this is a little bit tangential now. It's identity versus reality, but it was really hard because I had no idea how to process it. And since then, it's been, I mean, it still sucks, but it's been a lot easier because I'm like, okay, well, this will pass. This is annoying. I'm kind of going to move through the depression stage a little faster, get through the denial stage a little faster, and get into the deal with it stage, because it's just what it is. And I've been here before. I've come out of it before. Things have been fine before. So if I just get through this rough patch, get back on track. And this only came from going through like annoying things like injuries and cancellations and bad races and stuff like that. I think it's a little bit harder to deal with a poorly executed race. Like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like my mental game's off, or I make mistakes, or I finish and I'm like, did I push myself as hard as I could have? Did I sort of have a mental breakdown and whatnot mid-race? Like, I don't know what happened. I can't even really remember. And that I find really hard to deal with because I feel like it's more my fault. And that's really frustrating when you don't get to show your fitness because you've made a mistake in the face of pressure, basically. But I think that that's a really normal feeling, especially having conversations with many of you guys and many of my athlete peers, is that that's something that a lot of people struggle with. So that's something on a personal level I've been trying to work on the last few years, is my like sports psych mental skills training and how to nail execution of a race and how to learn from when it doesn't work out quite properly and move forward from that. I actually find disappointment like incredibly motivating, because the feeling sucks so much that I don't want to feel it again. And so I'm very driven to avoid bombing races and to avoid getting injured and to avoid like putting myself in a position where I can feel sad because it sucks. And so I'll do everything I can for success, almost to avoid failure, which I don't know if that's healthy or not, but I often come out of failures more motivated than I was before. So there is sort of a silver lining there. When Faye and I were chatting about this before, we were talking about how there's sort of joy and triumph in like polarizing your life and going through things that are yucky in order to do things that are fun. So be that hard training to race well, go through some bad races, and then some really good races, feel better. And we sort of made an analogy to listening to the radio. And when you listen to the radio, there are always songs that they're just not very good. But you sort of bear them out. You endure them, because then the good songs come on and they sound that much better because you had to listen to a crappy song right before. And it's sort of like when you make a playlist of all of your favorite songs, you start to dislike some of those songs relative to your extra favorite songs because now everything's good. So I don't know if that makes sense, but by enduring things that are just average, it makes the good so much better because you know that you've gone through a lot. If it was easy, it wouldn't be as satisfying.
Yeah.
I think another thing to know about racing is that you're really vulnerable because you're out there, everyone can see you, you've probably voiced your goals to others, and failure is really obvious because you know what a good race is and you know what a bad race is. And like, I don't know, when I'm racing on the track, everyone can see me, and it's so obvious when it's not going well. But I'm not normally embarrassed when it doesn't go well. I think that there is like empowerment and joy that can come from being vulnerable. Like it's true in anything, in relationships and in risk taking and whatnot. Like when you put yourself out there and you nail it, it feels so good. And so I think that is why a lot of you guys train, is because you're searching for that feeling of, bam, I nailed it. And so I don't think that disappointment has to be looked at as something to avoid necessarily. I think it's something that happens, and then you endure it, and then you grow from it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Before we kind of open it up to questions, guys, I just want to like leave with like one thought, and it touches on what Jessica's kind of talking about here. And my favorite runner, other than Jessica, is Steve Prefontaine, and he has my favorite quote that's to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. And so to me, what that quote means is that the gift isn't you winning a race or you gaining a sponsor or you looking cool to your friends or beating your friends. The gift is really the effort, because that's at the end when you cross that finish line, like those endorphins and that feeling of that amazing feeling you get isn't because of the placement. Does it really matter if you came 13th or 14th? It really is just about the effort. It's the feeling of completely emptying the tank, as I like to say. And that's something that is in your control. So I have actually very few races that I'm very disappointed on, because I've gotten really good at just emptying the tank and giving it my all. If it wasn't for the soup and spear, like, I'd be happy with a lot of my races. But that remembering that really is the gift, and as corny as it sounds, but yeah, that's kind of what we're all addicted to. That's what we're all sort of searching for, and that's really in your guys' control. The effort is something that you guys, when you get on this, when you're out there racing or you're on that start line, you have a choice. Like, am I going to push myself today and see my honest potential, or am I going to, race a little cautiously and not leave it all out there? And I think that, to me, there's no better feeling. So when we get a race again, I'd love to see some gutsy races. We've been working with a lot of you for a while now, and that's kind of the biggest change in what we've seen in a lot of you guys is just you're racing aggressively and you're going out there and finding your true potential, not just this, 7 out of 10 effort where you're like, I had a little bit more in the tank.
So I was safe.
That's not the feeling that you want to have. Trust us. It's so, yeah, it's just coming back to what's in your control and what's not in your control. And effort is 100% in your control. And this concept of pushing yourself in pain tolerance is not just going to show up come race day. It's something that you guys need to train day in and day out, and something, if you want to be good and really see what you're made of, that's what training's for. And so, yeah, I would just encourage you guys during this time to keep sort of pushing yourself, so that when races are back on, you know what's up. That's why I did my time trial today up this terrible mountain, and I was not having a good day, and I wanted to quit so bad, but I was like, if you keep practicing that bailing out and that 7 out of 10 effort, when you show up on race day, like, you're gonna give 7 out of 10. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to share. And really seen like a lot of you guys have become different athletes and really starting to really push yourself. And we've had Damien, I just want to give a shout out to him, who's been trying to break 20 minutes in the 5K. And I've really, really respected his ability to just go out and give her. And sometimes he may blow up, but I respect someone who has the guts to do that. And so, yeah, that's just kind of how I wanted to sort of finish this off and see if you guys have any questions.
I have questions. I always have questions.
Good. Lead us all.
So I'm just curious to know your thoughts about emptying the tank, because I think this is something that I still don't feel like I do very well. I think it comes from probably like a place of fear, thinking like, I don't want to pass out, I don't want to throw up on the streets, like I don't want that feeling of death like too often. And I do think that I probably do myself an injustice because I'm afraid to get to that point. So what would you say would be a good, I guess, schedule for kind of incorporating that into training, so that it's not like every run is going to be a painful one, but I at least get to that point of understanding like what my limit is, because I haven't been able to get there as yet.
Right. That's a really good question, because every workout should not be 10 out of 10. And and you should not go and start a long race instantly right off the gun as hard as you can, and then you'll empty the tank, but will it be a success? Probably not. Like there is an element in racing of strategy and technique, of course, as you guys know. So that is a really good question, because it's like, okay, well then great, how do I do that?
Yeah.
I think the one of the best things you can get from workouts, and especially tempo runs or longer intervals, is just getting to know what a feeling of discomfort feels like and getting comfortable with that. A lot of new racers, I think, are very shy from like the feeling of like physical exertion, because it's foreign to them, and so to them it's scary. My mom's a good example. She took up masters track for a bit, and it scared her to have DOMs after a workout, because she thought that was a dangerous thing. And it's just this like unfamiliarity with being uncomfortable and what you can tolerate and what you can't. So these workouts, especially tempo runs, when they're longer and you're just sort of pushing through this 8 out of 10 discomfort, is really good, because you get familiar with like, okay, I can tolerate this for a while. I can tolerate this for the next hour or whatever. We like to make race plans before races. So breaking down a race, thinking it through, and thinking, all right, first, our cross country coach, Faye and I were on the same university team for a year, and our coach would always say, run, what was it? The first half with your head and the second half with your heart. Halves are pretty big. We like to break it into thirds. So first third, play it safe. Second third, maintain, make some moves if you can, and then third, go nuts. Like there's not enough of the race left for you to implode. So but there's enough of the race left to make significant changes. So run really, really hard, practice emptying there. And so in training, you can try and make your last interval your strongest, or in a tempo run, try and tick up the pace maybe a teeny tiny bit at the end, try and finish strong.
And sometimes, I really think that sometimes to know what you're capable of, you're going to have to hit that wall and implode. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that Jessica and I can push ourselves really hard, because we've had races before where we've raced really gutsy, and we've gone out there and we've like legitimately seen us implode. Like I've ran races on the track where I couldn't even run in a straight line to the finish line. I was running with wobbly legs because I lost all coordination in my body, because I had so much lactic acid, and I went out so hard that I was just trying to put one foot in front of the other and prevent myself from toppling over. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying that sometimes to know your limit, you have to hit your limit. So these races that you went out too hard and you hit it and you crumbled and you fell apart, those will teach you, okay, that was 11 out of 10. At least I know what that felt like. And then you're not afraid of it. Like if you know that, what hitting the wall feels like in a race, it's not going to kill you. And you're better able to assess, okay, what's one gear below that? And what is that honest red line? So I know that's kind of how I got to kind of race aggressively, is poor mistakes when I was a kid of racing with my ego and not my head. So
thank you.
How do you control your like pre-race nerves so that you don't jump out at 11 right at the starting gun? I seem to have that problem.
Yeah,
that's you're a sprinter. You're like Maurice. She has the same problem.
I can't help it though.
It's true. And you sprinter types have less of a bandwidth to work with. So you can't, once you go over the line, you can't get back. Yeah. I think it's just having a really solid race plan and just believing. Like when I was in grade 12, I think, I was starting to run the 3K. So like the 2 mile for the first time, and I was like an 800-meter runner. And so that was pretty long for me. And every time I ran it, I went out like a bat out of hell. And every time I did that, just like Faye, I would waddle in and totally implode, and it was no good. And my best times were like 10:05, maybe around there, like just over 10 minutes every time I ran this race. And I ran it a bunch of times. And then this is a good story. So I had my grade 12 graduation, and I ran our provincial championship, so like our state championship, in a town like 2 hours from my city. Drove back, got my hair done, took an ice bath, went to the after grad party, which is something we do in Canada, big party, stayed till like 2, didn't drink. That was my one concession. In Canada, you can drink at 18. And then came home, flew to Vancouver, which is like an hour away the next day for another race. And I was like, I'm screwed for this race. And it was a big 3K. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? For the first time ever, I think I'm going to listen to my coach because I'm so screwed right now that, you know what? Let's just see what happens if I don't do it my way for a change and see if I listen to him. And he said, go out slow and then pick it up at the end. And so I was like, all right, well, let's try. Like, what? It's already like everything's stacked against me. And I PB'd by like 25 seconds. I ran 9:37, I remember, which was a good time for a high schooler. So what I learned there is that you should have a really, really sound race plan and commit to it. So none of this, so I think I can go faster. I feel really good right now. First kilometer, like I feel great. I think I can go faster. I think I can go faster. If you cross that line, you're screwed. You can make up time later, but once you cross that line, you cannot crawl back. So if you just trust us, trust that you should go at the pace we tell you to at the beginning for the first third or half or 2/3 or whatever we decide on, then go wild and you will have gas left versus the other way around. It doesn't work.
Awesome. Kara, I think you had a question.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask about, so are there kind of warning signs that you can start to feel that you're about to hit that wall, that maybe you can kind of do something to avoid that if you kind of feel like coming on, like when you're running a race? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and in OCR, it's a little bit different than road racing because in road racing, you're going to kind of like progressively, like you're going to, I don't know the best way to describe this, but you're going to feel like I have heavy legs and I'm at them past that threshold and you need to slow down, or you're just going to accumulate so much lactic acid that you're, like Jessica said, there's no point of return. But in obstacle course racing, it's kind of like a fartlek, and I'm sure you guys have all done, Jessica's given you guys all fartleks, but you're going to go in and out of different energy systems and different intensities. So you might feel like in a really, really shitty place climbing up Killington Mountain, and you might be over the sort of an ideal heart rate for that duration of the race. But just sort of knowing that there are times where you're going to have an obstacle that's going to be like, what are those? What's that one, that new caged one? I forget what it's called. I don't know, but there are some obstacles that are going to take your heart rate and there's going to come down. So you're going to kind of get that recovery, and same with a lot of the descents. So in obstacle, it's kind of just like managing the amount of energy that you have over that duration, and knowing that just because you hit it in obstacle racing, you can also come out of it. But like signs would be, I mean, obviously like heavy legs, high heart rate. But a lot of times if you're fit, like just a couple reset breaths like really help. So I usually do what's like 3 deep breaths if I'm kind of like hyperventilating, which I tend to do a lot, but I just take 3 reset breaths really slow, like and that will calm your heart rate down probably like 20 beats a minute, and you'll be back into a working zone an appropriate working zone for the entirety of the race. But yeah, I think like I said before, it's just like trial and error, like playing around with those different things, and you have like a whole range of workouts and fartleks and intervals and stuff like that to kind of learn these things. It doesn't need to always be learned in a race, and it's probably not the best way to learn it because you've spent all this money flying there and doing that. But the better you get at doing these intervals that Jessica is giving you, and finding that comfortable, that manageable uncomfortable, so being comfortable with being uncomfortable, once you find that zone, it just becomes easier and easier to kind of go back to that.
Mm-hmm. It's trial and error, but it is also learning to read your body. So I think, I don't know, Faye, correct me if I'm wrong, but normally you don't trick yourself into being like, I'm fine. Oh, I'm not fine. Normally it's like, oh, this is really hard. Can I maintain this? I think I can. So if you do a lot of like reflection and positive self-talk, of course, but like sort of a check-in and be like, okay, can I keep this going? Yeah, I think I can. Then you probably can. And if you're like, oh, it's going to take a lot of focus, then maybe you can. And if it's like, oh crap, then you went too hard. So it's just experience, and just you get used to what those sensations feel like.
Yeah, and I think like a good point there is positive self-talk. Been doing endurance racing for a very long time, and your head is going to give up before your body. So when your mind is starting to say, "Oh man, this is hard, this hurts," your body, has a lot left in it. You're just, I think from, I don't know if it's just like what it is, but you don't, running is hard, and I don't think that any sane person wants to push themselves that hard. So your brain is always going to trick you, being like, all right, it's had enough, and kind of try and protect itself. And the best
Mhm.
endurance racers in the world are good at overriding that, and they understand that. Like, I understand today when I was doing my time trials, like, this sucks. And I was actually thinking of my why. I was like, you can't quit now, because you're going to have to tell all your athletes like why you train hard, and you just can't drop out of this workout. But my mind was telling me that it wanted to be done, but you're not done. You have like multiple gears after your brain starts to give up.
Mhm. Yeah. Damien just asked, so should we blow up in workouts more often than not? And no, you shouldn't. So Faye's talking about, or we're talking about, I guess, the idea of getting as much as you can out of yourself. But that doesn't mean blowing up, because then you're not getting the most that you can out of yourself. That means you've gone too hard at the wrong time. So the best way to do a workout and a race, in my opinion, and this is shown time and time again with like world records in track and field, and how to win a race in track and field, which would be the same principle in an obstacle course race, is negative splitting or even splitting. So you should always aim to have your intervals go like same speed, or maybe get a little bit faster as you go on. If you start out too hard and blow up, you won't be able to run as hard. It'll be really difficult, and there's no net gain. So just because you're in a lot of pain doesn't mean you're running really fast. So that's where strategy comes in. You can empty the tank by running as hard as you can at the end of the workout. That's how it should be properly executed, versus blowing up and you don't finish, or you run slow at the end. That's not, I wouldn't say that is like the best way to run, because I mean, if you add all the times together, they're not faster than running evenly or negative splitting. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess like I was trying to figure out, how do you know, like in terms of like hitting the wall, like how do you know what the limit is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unless you hit the wall, right? Like at some point you got to
Yeah.
know like where it is. So I guess there was more or less geared like at some point of the workout, and maybe it's at the end, do I try to find what that limit is? And maybe that last interval sometimes is going to be slower than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's going to be faster, because like I'm trying to figure out like, okay, is it here, or is it really here?
Yeah.
So not to completely blow up so that you don't finish the workout, but just get to the point where it's like, okay, that was a little bit too much this time, and next time I know.
Yeah. I would say the place for that is the end of the workout, the last interval.
Okay.
And when you look back at that and reflect on the workout, and you're like, you know what, that wasn't that hard. I think I could have gone faster the entire time. Then next time that we're doing something at a similar pace, like 10K pace or whatever, 5K pace, whatever I give you, just move the bar a little higher.
Okay.
Yeah. So not every workout needs to be finished at a 10 out of 10, nor should they be. I think that there is something to be said for saving that fierceness and that intensity for racing, because it's exhausting to try and exert a 10 out of 10 effort. I think most workouts should be done like 8 or 9 out of 10, depending on the workout. But just being in touch with, how does this feel? How was this a 6 out of 10? Then next time, move the bar, move the bar, move the bar.
Any more questions?
All right, we've taken a lot of your time, so thank you for tuning in. And if you think of any, feel free to email us. Our next, two things. We want to compile a list of virtual races that are in the future and could be goals to work towards, that are meaningful and look fun and whatnot. So if you guys come across any, then shoot them to us, because I was doing some research and there are so many, and I was like, I don't know. There's like run around the block for 25,000 hours. Then there's like do 5 million burpees. And I don't know what is meaningful or exciting or motivating. So if you see one, you're like, yeah, I want to train for that, let us know and we'll add it to the list and share it with others. And maybe we can rally the troops and make this a fun thing. And then the other thing we wanted to say is our next talk in a few weeks will be on nutrition. And people always have lots and lots of nutrition questions. So if you can think of any off the bat or any topics in particular that you'd like us to cover, then shoot us an email and we'll start to put that together. Okay.
Awesome. And just lastly, on our like next like monthly meetings or whenever we talk to you guys next, like if you guys thought of some process goals that kind of stuck with you over this call and want to work towards those and tinker your training towards those goals, no matter what they are. If there's something strange, Jessica and I will tell you, oh, this isn't the best goal, but for the most part, it's kind of, we're in this weird time where kind of anything goes. So if they're fitness related or whatever, let us know and we can work towards those to kind of give you guys a little bit of a stronger why for why you're, hammering these workouts. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for giving us your time. It's great to see you guys again.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Nice meeting everyone.
Yeah, great to meet everyone.
See you guys.
Thanks.